Hello children, hope you're fine. This is Radha, your English teacher. Yes, in today's class we're going to talk about Louis Pasteur, conqueror of disease. Okay, we are going to understand what Louis Pasteur was doing. Okay, so before we get into the lesson, we can understand the author. E.H. Catter. Herbert Emmond Catter was an American biochemist and an educator. He grew up in central Indiana. So he was a biochemist educator and he grew up in central Indiana. This is about a small introduction about the author. So now we will understand here, who is Louis Pasteur and what did he do? Okay, yeah, it's unit number 4, Louis Pasteur, conqueror of disease. On the field of battle in one of his campaigns, Napoleon decorated for bravery a certain tanner named Pasteur. His brave soldier had an equally brave son, Louis Pasteur, born 7 years after Waterloo. He was not a soldier, but he was a fighter. So now here we are talking about Louis Pasteur and his father. His father was a brave soldier, but Louis Pasteur never got into the soldier's field, so he went to conquer he wanted to discover some of the chemicals or some of the bacteria or some of the germs. He was interested in science field, but whereas his father was a soldier, but unfortunately Louis Pasteur did not become a soldier. So after 7 years of Waterloo, Louis Pasteur was born. That is, after the war, Louis Pasteur was born. He found disease. He devoted his life to study of what we sometimes call germs. So Louis Pasteur was very much interested in the field of science, like how these germs are created, how these germs are coming, from where. So he was very much dedicated and understanding towards this concept called bacteria and germs, which man of science called bacteria. So in science we call it as bacteria, he says, a Greek word meaning little rods. Bacteria are vegetable organisms, little rod-shaped plants which exist in the air, water and soil, and in the bodies of animals and plants. Some, but not all, are the causes of diseases. Some convert matter into food for plants. So now here, Louis Pasteur is talking about the word bacteria, we call it in science, and in Greek we call it as little rods. So in different language we call this bacteria and we also call it as germs. He says that these bacteria are coming from animal bodies, from plants, and from vegetable organisms, he says. Now here, he also says the negative effect of bacteria and the positive effect of bacteria. The positive effect, he says here, some convert matter into food of plants. They are not the bad bacteria. It is a good bacteria for the plants. Louis Pasteur had a very busy and interesting life. Yeah, he was very much busy and he was also having a very interesting life on how these bacteria came out? What are the causes? He was very much interested in learning about this science. He also, he not only made some existing discoveries about germs, but he was able to use his discoveries in very practical way. He used to understand and he used to do it in a practical way. He worked hard in his laboratory. He worked hard in his laboratory with test tubes and all kinds of experiments. So he was so busy working on all the labs and also working with the different experiments. He wants to understand what exactly it is. He was very hard worker. But nearly all the time he was working to help poor. What he was doing, he was working all the time to help the poor people who are suffering in some special way from disease. Among the people whom Pasture was able to help were breeders, breeders of silkworms and cow keepers. Children, breeders means one who makes beer. That is the manufacturing industries, the people who were manufacturing there, they were very much affected to this bacteria and they were having some problem. So he wanted to help them. That's the reason he wanted to discover on this study. Breeders of silkworms and cow keepers, all of whom were trying to carry an important industries in France. Pasteur was always very proud of being able to help his country in this way. Obviously, children, Pasteur was very much interested and he was very much proud that yes, I can help these poor in this way. Louis Pasteur, born in a little French country town, was interested in chemistry. What he was interested in? He was interested in chemistry field. When he was very young, after studying hard in Paris and showing great promise, he began to teach and lecture as professor of chemistry. As Louis Pasteur was very much interested in the field of chemistry, he became a lecturer. That is, he became the professor in one of the college for the subject chemistry. He became a professor at Starbucks in Alice and he married a wife who was always to be his closest companion and assistant. Now he got married and his wife was always a very good close companion and a very nice assistant for Louis Pasteur. Pasteur was deeply interested in all the new experiments that were being made in chemistry and decided to solve some of the difficulty problems that were worrying chemists and other scientists. What he is doing is not an easy task, right, children? It is something related to the scientist job he is doing. So, although all of his mates, that the scientists, were not able to perform properly, he was worried. He was worried about the problems faced. So he used to go and help them. He used to overcome the problems. Although they are not able to discover, he used to go and he used to try to solve those problems. Pasteur was deeply interested in all the new experiments. They were being made in chemistry and decided to solve some of the difficulty problems. As I told, when there were difficulty, he used to go and solve the problems. He used to overcome. He used to teach them the problems. They were worrying chemists and other scientists. Sometimes he used to sit for hours, quite silent and motionless. thinking hard about one of his difficulties. So now here Pasteur was so much dedicated to his work. He used to sit for hours and hours together and work on that experiment to overcome the problem. Yes, he used to also sit quietly to understand what exactly it is, how we shall work. He was so much involved in his work. He found this the easiest way to solve the problem. And when he thought of a solution, his kind, tired looking face would brighten with pleasure and excitement. He would rush round to tell his discovery to his wife and to others who were helping him. So now here, as I told you, he used to sit for hours and hours together, and he also used to sit quietly and think of the solution. So once if he is getting the solution, he was so much overwhelmed. He was so much happy that all the sad look, all the tired look on his face used to brighten because he got the solution. So once when he gets the solution, he goes and throws his happiness to all of his companions and also to his wife. He enjoys, like when he gets the solution, he enjoys and he also makes others, yes, we have achieved. This is what his feeling was. In 1854, Pasteur was appointed head of the College of Science as Lille, a busy manufacturing town in northeast of France. So now what happened? Louis Pasteur was appointed as the head of the College of Science department. He was pleased about this because he always felt that trades and industries could be helped very much by the researches of man of science. His chance to be useful soon came. So now what happened as Louis Pasteur was the head of the science college? He felt that yes, it is a very busy manufacturing town in the southeast of France. He also feels that there is a lot of scope for trade and industry. So I can really help them out. And of course, he was also very proud that he has got this job. Pasteur, as a younger chemist, had always been interested in problems. How interesting the question is here. We usually feel we run out of problems, but Pasteur was never like that. He understands why, what. He wants to get into the problem and understand why am I getting into this problem. That is Louis Pasteur. So here I have written three questions. So here in this paragraph, he wants to discover why milk turns bad and why meat goes bad. And he also wants to understand why wine ferments. So he wants to understand all this. Why does this happen? What is the cause? Pasteur, as a young chemist, had always been interested in problems of why and how living things decay. Why milk turns sour? Why meat goes bad? Why wine ferments? He started to give some lectures in Lille on fermentation. One of the chief industries in Lille was the manufacture of alcohol from beetroot, and he was fortunate in being able to carry out experiments in some of the beavers. Okay, so now here what happens? As I told you, Pasteur wanted to get into, he was very much interested in problems. He wanted to discover why all this happens. Okay, and now he feels that he was one of the chief industry. Okay, now he has got a very good job. It is one of the trade and industries, and which plays a very important role. And he also thought that I can do a favor, I can help the industry to overcome the problems, right? And then what happened? One of the chief industry in Lily was the manufacture of alcohol from beetroot. They used to take the alcohol from beetroot. That was one of the manufacturing companies. He was fortunate in being able to carry out experiments in some of the devices. It means that fortunately he went to that company where he has to, devices means, as I told, it's a manufacturing company of beer. Okay, so one manufacturer consultant Pasture about his beer, which was turning out badly. And Pasture was helping them. Beaver managed to discover all sorts of things that he did not know before about yeast. One manufacturer consultant Pasture about his beer, which was turning out badly. The Pasture, by helping this, Beaver managed to discover all sort of things that he did not know before about yeast. Yeast is used to make beer, foam, and bread rise up lightly. Pasture became certain that Pasture, by helping this beaver, managed to discover all sort of things that he did not know before about yeast. Yeast is made to use to make beer, foam, and bread rise up lightly. Pasture became certain that yeast was alive, made up of tiny living cells. When these cells were healthy, the yeast reacted well. But if they were diseased, the yeast and the beer went wrong. So now as he entered into the manufacturing company of the alcohol, and there they had told him that why this beer is getting spoiled and it is going bad. And then he discovered because of the yeast. It is a type of fungus, a tiny plant which is used to produce alcohol. So in this substance, that is yeast, when it overreacts, the whole of the beer will go spoil. If it doesn't react, the whole of the beer is fine. He says there is no fungus. Only when it is reacting too much, when the fungus is going high, the beer goes bad. After a few years, Pasteur was made director of scientific studies at a famous college in Paris. What happened? As he has been discovering, and everyone were very happy about his job and his experiments because he was overcoming all the problems. He was also finding out the solution. So now he had become here the director of scientific studies at the famous college in Paris. He was still thinking about decay and yeast and germs. After the discovery also, after he got into a director post also, he was still thinking about the yeast and the germs. And one of the problems that he was trying to answer was this: do germs form from other germs? Now he started to think of the germs. He feels, do germs form from other germs or do they just come by themselves? People like Pasteur believed that germs are carried in the air and might infect other things that came in contact with them. Others believed in what they called spontaneous generation. That is, they believed that germs had no parents but just occurred by themselves. Now here what happened? Pasteur started to think about germs. How do they form? Are they growing, or is it coming spontaneously? Means suddenly are they coming? Is it coming by the breeze or is it infected? All this he is thinking of this germs. Pasteur proved that he was right by a very simple and clever experiment. He put some soup into some bottles and then he boiled it in order to destroy any germs that might already be in a soup. So now here, what and all Pasteur was thinking, he really felt what I am thinking is what. So now he tries a experiment. Pasteur proved that he was right by a very simple and clever experiment. He put some soup into small bottles and then he boiled it. What did he put? He put some soup into the some bottle and he started to boil it in order to destroy germs. He boiled the soup because he thought that the germs will go away that might already be in the soup. After that, he heated and pulled out the neck of each bottle until it formed a long, narrow neck with a big bend in the middle. The soup remained there for a long time and it never went bad. So he was trying another experiment, giving a soup in the glass and boiling them. And after that, he opened the lid of the bottle and he is doing an experiment. What is happening? The soup remained there for a long time and it never went bad as it would have done if it had been standing in the bowl in the kitchen. That, said Louis Pasteur, is because there are no parent germs in the soup. Here he discovers that the germs, they don't have any parents. They are spontaneously coming. Through this experiment, he realizes they don't have any parent germs. They come just like that in the breeze and they go out in the breeze. And they cannot reach it because of the bend in the long tube. So he took one of the bottles and split a little of soup down and tube so that it settles in the bend. This soup went bad. So now what happened after the experiment? As he was trying another solution, and here the second thing, the soup had spoiled. The soup went bad. The often spark of dust traps. Well, this bend in the tube was a dust trap because the dust, which as we know now, may carry germs. Now he says because of the dust is carrying a lot of germs here. Could catch as far as the bend, but no further, and it settled there and infected the soup. And the dust which sat on the bottle has caused the germs in the soup, he says. Okay, children? So till here, this is enough. I have completed till 9th paragraph. I shall continue it in the next class. So before that, I will just tell you what I have written on the board. The meaning, brewers, one who makes beer. Yeast, a type of fungus, a tiny plant which is used to produce alcohol. Is it clear, children? So this is enough for today's class. Hope you understood. Thank you, children.